This is really good. So this is a black activist, I would say an activist who happens to be black, by the name of Bob Woodson, on the Dr. Phil show, talking about what has happened in the black community and how it relates to basically everything we're talking about here today.
You say you don't support reparations. Why not?
Not everybody suffered equally. I mean, when you go into slavery, it's much more complex than white people were the oppressors and black people were the victims. If you dissect it, you will find there were about 3,700 free blacks who owned 12,000 slaves, black slaves. The question is, do the descendants of those free blacks who owned black slaves, do they pay? Blacks really benefited more the first 100 years after slavery than we have in the last 50 years. I was born in 1937 during the Depression. Everyone in my small, low-income black community, 98% of the households had a man and a woman raising children. Elderly people could walk safely in that community without fear of being assaulted by their grandchildren. Never heard a gunfire during that time. Never heard of a child being shot to death in the crib. But there are 50 children today who have been shot and killed in our cities. If you're talking about remedies, we've got to look beyond saying that every solution has to have a winner and a loser, that blacks can only benefit if whites lose. We have to be defined more than just victims of oppression. When whites were at their worst, blacks were at their best. When we were denied access to hotels, we built our own. We have to communicate to our people the history of how they achieved in the face of oppression. But if we continue to sit back and say all of the challenges that we face in out of wedlock births, of violence, that somehow the control of that is in the hands of white America, and therefore until white people change, there's nothing that we can do. This sets up a terrible situation for this nation. The big crisis facing America is not racial. It is the moral and spiritual freefall that is consuming our children. The highest death rate among black families is homicide. Among Silicon Valley, the highest level of suicide, 6 times the national average. In Appalachia, there are prescription drugs. And so if we are to address this crisis that is causing our children to lack a sense of personal responsibility or value for their own life, they will take their own life or take someone else's. So in order to address that, we must come together and look beyond race and realize America is drowning because it's in a moral and spiritual freefall. None of us should be defined by the worst of what we were in the past, but we should be defined by what we want to become in the future, and that people are motivated to change when you give them a vision of victories that are possible, not constantly reminding them of injuries to be avoided.
What makes more sense? What that man is saying, or what you hear out of Lori Lightfoot or Pete Buttigieg or Joe Biden?